Well, hey, everybody. Andy here. Thanks for joining us tonight here on this Friday evening. I'm with Brent here from Smolder Outdoors. He's going to join me here in a second. We're going to talk a little bit about winter camping, specifically winter backpacking. And so I'm playing the part here. I'm all bundled up. I'm ready to go. It's only about 150 degrees in this coat right now. I have my beverage of choice. I think he's got his beverage of choice.
Yeah, buddy, man. I got my my
How you doing
dust
tonight?
as usual.
All right, that's enough of this. All right. I've even got the winter layering on. That was smart.
Indoors, sweating your butt off.
So what's going on? How's your week been?
Crazy, man. Work's been nuts. So this is definitely something I've been looking forward to, though. I mean, just getting away from the work grind and the life grind and talk a little bit of backpacking.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've been itching to get back out here and chat a little bit more, and I miss it. And I appreciate everybody for being here and being a part of this. We will be taking questions and whatnot as we go through. I see we already have some folks here. Tonya's back. Welcome. She gets the first comment of the show. It's always a plus. All right, so let's dive into this, I guess. We don't need to wait around anymore. Winter backpacking. So the title of this, the theme was, is it awesome or are we just crazy? Because depending on who you talk to, you're probably going to get one of those two answers. Although I guess there's probably a third in there too. You're going to get, oh yeah, it's awesome, or you're crazy, or
both.
Yeah, I don't know if I really like, I love backpacking. I love all that stuff, but maybe winter's not for me. So maybe there's a middle ground that there's people out there that want to try it, they want to get into it, but that haven't, or they just hate freezing their butt off, I guess. So what's your thoughts? Is it awesome or are we crazy?
A little bit of both. I think you have to be crazy to go out in, single-digit temperatures and decide, hey, I'm going to go sleep in the woods. But it's pretty awesome. I mean, some of the things I like about it, you get a lot better views on some trails because the leaves are down. Trails are a lot less trafficked in the wintertime. And it's just a change of pace, right? It's something different from what we do the other 3 seasons. So I'm a fan. I love it.
Yeah. I'm in that category too. I think most people that I talk to, if they're not in the backpacking community, it's unanimous. You're crazy. If you're in the backpacking community, it's probably mostly it's awesome. I bet, but I still think there's a few people out there that are like, yeah, that's for the birds. I'm not going outside in February and 10-degree weather. So is that your thought too? Do you agree with that, or?
Totally. I think you definitely hit it on the head on that one.
Okay. All right. So we mentioned that we're both fans of it, which I guess that would get into kind of the next question, which is, why the hell do you love winter backpacking? What's the deal?
I mean, for me, like I said, I touched on it a little bit already, but I think my favorite part of it is just that it's different and the trails are so empty in the middle of winter. Summertime, some trails can be like amusement parks out there where there's just so many people on it. And me personally, I backpack to get away. So that's my stress relief from work, stress relief from life. I want to get out there and just kind of be out away from technology, away from the daily grind. And wintertime is probably the best time to do that for me. It's just it's solitude that I find when I do it. How about you?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think of like our trips to here in Indiana, the Charles Dean Wilderness, and how different a trip is in March even, or February, when it's still, a threat of snow, versus, going out in July when it's like party central.
Totally agree.
So I love doing the winter stuff. Now um, I love going out in all seasons, but I'm probably more of a fan, and this may be a little strange, of winter backpacking than I am of dead in the middle of summer backpacking. I mean, July and August, when it's just brutally hot and the bugs are everywhere and whatever, I still go, but I don't know that I love it quite as much as I do, even when it's, because in the wintertime here in Indiana, I mean, you're going to get, during the day, it's 40 degrees, 45 degrees. It's not going to be so uncomfortable. Yeah, occasionally it's going to be single digits. But overnight, it's going to be freezing or slightly below. But I think with the proper gear, with what we have, you can be pretty comfortable. You have a nice campfire. You have, a nice beverage to help keep you warm, and you can have a nice toasty night. And like you said, there's nobody else out there. You kind of have the place to yourself. Um, if you do see somebody else out there, they're just as crazy as you are. So, they just want to be left alone. But it's
Yeah.
it's completely different when you go out in the middle of the summer. And I love that too. It's 1,000 people out there at the point, it feels like. And, we had live music the last time we were out there. Was it the last time we were out there or the time before that?
That
Or
was the last time. That was in August, I think.
yeah, somebody was out there, a couple of people with guitars or whatever playing and singing. So we were like, I don't know, 3 or 4 campsites down from them, and the sound just carries, especially in the evenings. But yeah, winter camping is, for me, what do I love about winter camping? Um, you mentioned that it's the solitude side. I would also say there's no bugs. For me,
Yeah.
that's kind of nice, not having to worry about mosquitoes, ticks, any of that kind of stuff. Um, I don't know that we get impacted a ton by that stuff anyway, but it's there. And in the winter, you just don't have that to worry about. I love sleeping. You talk about like sleeping in your hammock, and you have the sound of rain coming down.
Yeah.
And that's a nice feeling and a nice sound. But I'd also say there's something about snowfall. I've been in my hammock before, and with the DCF tarp, just the sound of snow hitting it and kind of piling up, and you have to knock it off. There's something that's really cool about that feeling. And I found that I'm usually pretty well prepared, maybe even a little over prepared when it comes to like warmth, because that's probably everybody's probably biggest concern going out in the winter is hey, if I'm not warm, I'm miserable. So I'm bringing extra everything so that I'm comfortable. So I'm usually like in my tent or in my hammock, borderline sweating.
Right.
So I'm completely comfortable. I love it out there. So, but the other thing I'd say is you get the views. There's something about when you're hiking around in the winter and all the leaves are down, and you can see quite a distance. We talked about doing the AHT in June this year when we did it, and I think a lot of the views were obstructed, and I think it would have been very cool to be down there in February and do that same trail, but now be able to see the Ohio River in the distance, and some of the other areas that have wonderful overlooks and cliffs and all this stuff, and you couldn't really see much of that just because everything's overgrown in the middle of the summer.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I mean, that's something that's definitely on my list too, is getting back to the AHT in that winter season. Uh, I'd almost even consider myself more of a 3-season backpacker, but not leaving out winter and just leave out the dead of summer. Uh, it's rough. You can always add more clothes, add more layers, do things to stay warm, but in the dead heat of July and August, I mean, there's only so much you can do to cool off. And it's just not fun laying there just sweating, sticky, gross, because there's just nothing you can do to escape the heat. So cold can be dealt with, but heat's a whole nother challenge. So
Yeah.
I'd much rather go in the wintertime than dead of summer for sure.
So have you done much winter backpacking?
I have done some, so I haven't had that snowfall experience that you did yet. Every time that I've gone in the wintertime, it's been clear skies, nice weather. Haven't had to experience that part yet. Hopefully soon, but haven't gotten there yet. I think the coldest temperatures I've ever been in were high teens at nighttime, so nothing too extreme. I know you've gone down single digits, so
Yeah.
I think you've got a one up on me there, but I can't imagine it would be that much different than sleeping in the teens as long as you have the right gear set up for it and you're planning for it.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest key. Now if you're getting below, and I've never gone like below zero, you hear about these people that do like the, northern Minnesota, winter camp out stuff where it's like, okay, we have to survive in, 40 below wind chills and stuff like that. I'm sure that's a whole different ball game, but for, I think the coldest that I've done was single digits, 7 degrees, something like that was the morning low. And that was a pretty chilly night. For me, the kind of the next thing, if we were to talk about, we asked, what do you love about it? What do you hate about it? For me, the absolute worst thing is the first 3 minutes getting out of your tent, getting out of your hammock the next morning. I'm thinking about coffee. I'm thinking about getting food started. I'm toasty warm in my tent or in my hammock, and I know that I'm going to be frozen solid in like 3 or 4 minutes as soon as you get out, because you're typically, at least for me, I'm getting out and I'm in thermals or something, but I don't often sleep in like the shirt and pants on top of that. So I've got those set up in my hammock or in the tent, like, all right, when you wake up, throw those on over your thermals and get out. But you pull that bag off and like all the heat just rushes out, and when it's 7, I remember, and I was in a hammock, and I got out of the hammock in 7-degree temperature, and my boots were on the ground and they were frozen. So I had socks on still, but putting my socks into those boots, and like you couldn't lace up the laces real well because they were just kind of frozen solid for a couple minutes until like your body heat thawed it out enough. But that was kind of like the worst, because you're getting out, and I had to, if I remember, I had a different change of clothes that were in my pack, which was on the ground. So it was like, get out in your thermals, into your boots, walk over to the tree, get your stuff out, and then like you're just out in, you're not still in your tent, so you're just out there kind of pulling pants over your thermals and whatnot. But that's a pretty brutal first couple minutes of the day. Once I get everything dressed and you can get a fire going, or at minimum you can get the stove going to get a little bit of coffee, it all changes. And then by the time you get to the point of like getting ready to pack up camp, you're pretty warm just from moving around, even when it's cold, just because, like you said, you bring enough gear. So you've got 3 different layers on and a down jacket or whatever on top. And, like I was at the beginning of the video, I've got like all this stuff on. You get pretty warm pretty quick. And by the time you're getting ready to hike out of there, like you're stripping off the top layers because it's too hot. Even in the winter camping the backpacking that I did like last February going down to Red River Gorge, I couldn't hike in all that stuff. So like you'd sit in camp and be cold, and so you'd put all your layers on. But the minute you wanted to start hiking around, I wanted to take like my R1 off, because even it was a little toasty, and it was 38 degrees or something like that hiking around with snow on the ground everywhere. But so I don't find it that bad once you get going. It's just the first 3 to 5 minutes getting out of the tent, getting out of the hammock. What about you?
It's funny that you said that because when you told me what the topic of today was going to be, the winter backpacking, I knew that question was going to pop up. What's the hardest part about it? Uh, and it's the exact same thing for me, man. It's those first couple minutes in the morning. It's that mental battle of, do I just lay here in the hammock and stay warm, or the tent, and just cuddle with my quilt and just not have to get up to pee? Or do I get up and be an adult and go out and do all the camp chores and things that I need to do? It's just the worst. It's the biggest struggle of winter backpacking is forcing yourself to get up in the morning. Um, Putting on cold shoes and cold clothes because, like you, I'm in thermal. So then, I have to change clothes and put on these clothes that are like so cold they're hard and halfway frozen sometimes. Uh, it's so hard to get up and get going.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the grand scheme of things, it all pays off. I mean, it's worth it. That little tough part of the trip. I mean, you're gonna have tough parts of any trip. That's just the hardest part of winter backpacking for sure for me. One little caveat to that too, though, is make sure you go to the bathroom before you go to bed, because waking up at 3 a.m. to go get out of the warm
Mhm.
hammock is a real struggle too.
It is, but it's a must. I've done that
Yep.
before, and I don't know if it's just being colder that you have to go, but um, I've had one of those nights where it was like, oh, I can hold it till morning, and like you go what feels like an eternity, and it's like an hour, and you're like, okay, it's only now it's 2:32 in the morning. All right, I can't make it that long. I've got to get out, but it's so cold outside, you don't want to be running out there.
No,
So.
for sure.
Now, I'll say one thing about the winter stuff. I've only done like the longest I've done a full winter trip is a weekend. Is a 3-day trip. So I've done a lot longer. Doing 12 days out in New Mexico, or 4 days out in Colorado. In the summertime. But a 2-night. I think that's the longest I've done for winter stuff. I think I'd like to do more, but I think it's kind of hard too to get a full feel for whether you like it or not if you've only done it in short stints. A quick overnight or even 2 nights, I think you can get away with a lot easier and have it be a pretty enjoyable thing. If you're out there for 5 days or something, uh, I could understand that you might have some scenarios that come up that make you enjoy it a little bit less. But I don't know. I've never done it longer than 2 nights.
Maybe you'd enjoy it more too if you get out
It's
there and get used to it.
it's possible. I mean, if you're prepared, I think that's the biggest thing. But there's definitely some challenges. I think for me, we mentioned warmth. What would you say some of the other bigger differences between gear, concerns, things that you worry about in the winter versus things that you worry about in the summer when you're heading out?
Um, I mean, gear loadout definitely gets heavier in the wintertime. You do bring extra gear, you bring extra clothing, you bring heavier quilts. There's things you can bring like hand warmers and stuff like that to try to help. I'd say that's the biggest difference for me in trip planning in summer versus winter, is that the gear definitely does become more critical, more important to what you're doing because you're relying on that a little bit more. Um, as for trip planning, there's not a lot that's different. You got to watch for slipping if there's ice or snow. Um, Campsite selection becomes no problem because there's really nobody else out there but you.
Right.
So I'd say that makes it easier in winter. But I really, I've done it some. I haven't done it a ton. I do love the times that I've gone. Um, but I'd say just that gear selection and that added weight is probably the biggest challenge. Just making sure that you bring the right stuff, or you could be in a world of hurt.
Yeah. Well, and there's probably like little concerns too. I think of like, your water filter freezing,
Sure.
things like that, it's never a concern in the summertime for good reason. But I mean, in the winter, that's something that if your filter freezes, unless you've got a backup plan, you're having a hard time getting filtered water. So, the heavier gear, the conditions, Last time when going down to Kentucky, there was a whole route that I wanted to do that I had to completely cancel out because like it was an ice storm, winter storm warning or whatever had just ended. So, climbing up Indian Staircase that's covered in ice and snow was, I just had to completely throw it out the window. And I was so looking forward to doing it, but you kind of have to adjust to what the conditions allow for. So,
yeah. Michael Peterson just dropped a comment in there too. Just a really good point as well. You mentioned water filters potentially freezing. For anyone who doesn't know, in that sub-freezing, sub-32-degree weather, you absolutely should be sleeping with your water filter. You should have it in the quilt with you. Try to use your body heat to keep it warm to prevent that from freezing. Electronics, battery banks, stuff like that, they will die very quickly in the cold. So that's just one little challenge that you face when you are winter backpacking that you need to be aware of, is sleeping with some of that gear to make sure that it runs top shape for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's an easy one to forget. He mentions the batteries too. I mean, that stuff, you kind of sometimes forget about that stuff, that until you get the next morning and you turn your phone on and it's completely dead, and if you're using that for GPS, that could be a concern. So, the water filters, the batteries, you got to prepare for that. And I treat it the same way, the batteries, as I do the water filter. That stuff's going on my body, that's going in my pocket somewhere, so that when I get under the sleeping bag, that stuff stays warmer. Or if I'm in the tent, I notice my tents are typically pretty good at capturing some heat. So when I take a temperature reading in my tent, it's not unusual to be 10 degrees warmer than it is outside. And now that for my hammock setup with the Dutchware Chameleon, I use the top cover in the wintertime. And it's just like having, a top on your tent. It traps the heat in. So in there, it's typically, at least 5 to 10 degrees warmer than it is outside when I wake up. So it definitely helps, even if you don't have it on you, to help, keep it warmer. But if that's under the blankets or, in your pocket, or sometimes what I'll do is I'll put like my clothes, I'll ball them up and put them at my feet in the sleeping bag. And so it's not uncommon to have, batteries or my headlamp or something like that that's down there, keeping warm in case I need it in the middle of the night. I can also reach it pretty easily. So
for sure.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question, all right?
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna put you on the spot. So we've talked a lot about stuff at camp, primarily while you're backpacking in the wintertime. Let's talk one of the biggest challenges that you face while you're on trail in the winter, and that is staying dry. Sweat can be a real problem when it's really cold outside. It can cause hypothermia. So how do you set up your layering system? How do you work your layers, your clothing, to make sure that you're staying okay when you're out there?
Well, for me, so, I've typically got clothes that I'm bringing along that I don't wear until I'm in camp, typically, just because they're too warm. So if I'm bringing like the puffy jacket that I had on at the beginning of the show, I'm only wearing that when we've stopped, because it's too warm. If I wear that even for a couple minutes hiking on trail, I will be sweating. And for me, that's always a big thing that I'm trying to regulate, my body temperature to make sure it's warm enough. But I don't, to me, it's almost worse to be overheating in a freezing or close to freezing environment. So, staying dry, whether it's just your own perspiration or rain or whatnot, you get into those conditions. Probably the toughest are when it's like, 36 degrees and raining. So, you have the same kind of thing that you worry about with your clothing. It has to stay dry, because if you get wet, it's very difficult to stay warm. So for me, I'm typically going to have, some kind of a dry fit or a wool, either short sleeve, long sleeve shirt. I'm going to have kind of a light fleece that's extremely breathable. Something like a Patagonia R1 is kind of the one that's my go-to right now. Something like this, the Melanzana is probably not too bad either. I'm not sure exactly how well it'll perform um, on trail with a little bit of perspiration and things like that. How breathable is it? But you don't want anything that's going to hold the moisture. So, nothing that's cotton, nothing that's even remotely slow at drying out or pulling that moisture away from you. So I'll have a light fleece, and then I'll typically have like the down puffy jacket, and then I'm going to have some kind of a rain cover, or, a shell that's going to go over top, and that's the thickness of those changes a little bit based on what the forecast is. If it's going to be 45 degrees in the daytime and 35 at night, it might be a little bit thinner. But if it's going to be 35 during the day and 10 degrees at night, I'm going to be bringing the heavier stuff. But as you get going, you're typically pulling off, if I'm going on trail, my down jacket is definitely in my pack. I might have my rain shell on the outside of my pack so that I can put it on in case there's rain or something, because again, you got to stay dry. And then you've got, like a fleece, like the Patagonia R1 or something similar, and then your dry fit shirt. So, if you get hot, for me, it's not uncommon if you're hiking and it's raining or something like that, to get overheated in your rain shell. As breathable as some of these new materials are, they're not perfect when it comes to that. And if you're really doing a strenuous hike, you're gonna heat up fast. So then you have the issue of, can you stop? Can you shed the rain layer? And then shed your R1, your fleece, and go down to just a t-shirt, and then put your rain shell back on. I think you got to worry about doing those kind of things. Those conditions are probably one of the few times that I really think about bringing rain pants. I typically wouldn't bring them any other time of the year. I took them to Colorado, and part of that was the concern if we got nasty weather, 40 degrees and rain. I don't want my pants soaking wet, and then nightfall hits and everything's freezing. So, for me, it's a big concern. That's probably one of the big things on your mind is keeping dry. I have to think that's got to be the quickest way to get cold is to get wet. So, anything that you disagree with on that, or?
No, I mean, similar stuff. Normal hiking shirt, and then a mid layer, like a fleece layer. I've used the Melanzanas in cold weather and had good success with them. So, like you mentioned, though, the Patagonia R1, basically any fleece synthetic mid layer work. I'm actually wearing a brand new one right now. This is the Appalachian Gear Alpaca hoodie, so I'm looking forward to trying that one out. But yeah, it's layer management. It's adding layers, shedding layers, just being smart about it, knowing when you're starting to overheat and either slowing down or shedding a layer, knowing when you're starting to get cold and doing a little bit more cardio or adding a layer. But it is a game where we do, it's constantly changing, constantly evolving. I'm doing a lot of different things on a cold weather hike that I might not be as concerned with on a hike when it's in the 50s or 60s and 40 at night. I just don't have that scare of if I get drenched. Hypothermia is a real thing out here right now, so I just pay more attention to it and try to be smart about adding and dropping layers as I go.
Yeah, and I don't mind about, I was thinking about it as you were saying that you start to get a little bit warm. I don't mind pulling off that fleece, and there's a little bit of a chill to the air, and it might be even a little bit uncomfortable as long as it's not raining, but to kind of let your body temperature cool down. I think that's kind of essential. I don't mind being cold for a little bit because, again, I don't want to run the risk of overheating. So for me, you start to go that direction, taking a layer down, letting yourself be cold for a little bit isn't so bad. I don't mind that at all. I'm not uncomfortable typically, for a little bit of time, and it's just to kind of get your body core under control, and then you're probably looking at either putting the fleece back on, or you're just exerting yourself enough that in a t-shirt, even in 40-degree weather, is completely comfortable. So
Sorry, I had to run away and grab a beer real quick.
I'll be doing that probably in a minute or two because I didn't bring a second one in. So
yeah, I didn't start with a full one.
So if you were coaching somebody who's never gone winter hiking before, how would you coach them? What would you talk to them about? What would be kind of the keys?
I'd say the first things is I'd probably gauge their experience on 3-season backpacking first, see what their experience level was and how in depth that I had to go with my advice. But my biggest suggestions would be make sure that you're prepared for the temperatures, probably even a little beyond that in your gear selection. So if your forecast is going to be 28, 29, I'd suggest bringing 20-degree quilts. Just to be on the safe side, right? Talk about moisture management, talk about having a bailout plan in case things went wrong. It can be a lot more dangerous in wintertime. So,
Yep.
First trips, try to plan them in a place where you have a bailout option. Places where you're only a couple miles from the car, or road crossing, or somewhere where someone can meet you. I would not go out, into the middle of nowhere where you're totally away from everybody, no communication in the dead of winter on your first try. I just wouldn't do it. Speaking of communication, have a way to communicate with the outside world. If you have cell reception, great. If not, hopefully you're bringing an InReach or a Zaleo or something along those lines where you can reach people if you need them. And I'd also say don't do it alone your first time, if at all possible. Try to go with somebody who has some experience winter backpacking, because that can alleviate a lot of problems, a lot of guesswork, because it is a different challenge and it can be dangerous. So I'd say those are my 3 biggest tips. Make sure the gear is right, make sure that you have a way to communicate and a plan to bail out if you need it, and try to go with someone if you can.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how do you really teach, when we do stuff with the scouts, with the younger boys, a lot of those things that you mentioned, we're following. You're going to a place where, we're sleeping, like when we were one of the winter campouts, because we camp about every month. It was a January or February, and it was 10 or 15 degrees, but there's the cafeteria is heated, the dining hall. So if there was an issue with one of the boys or something happened, we had one year where they were running around the campsite playing tag, and like 2 of them come back because they fell in the creek, and they're completely drenched. So, you send them to go get changed, but that's a concern. Like if you had that out in the wilderness and you didn't have a place to go to get warm, you could really be in a bad situation. So you have to be, I think, a little more cautious. Testing out your gear in the backyard in the middle of the winter is not necessarily a bad idea. And if somebody's never gone camping in the wintertime, car camping, even in the wintertime, I'd probably recommend something like that just to get some experience. So again, you've got an easy out if something happens, and your gear, hey, I thought it was rated to 20, but it's 30 degrees and I'm freezing. Testing your gear out before you go in the middle of nowhere is a big deal. Do you see that back behind me?
Yeah.
They're that's my kids. Those are some of my scouts back behind me. I don't even know what they're doing. They're having fun, but like I was saying, you have an out, you have some things that you can fall back on. You've got a warm vehicle that you can get to. Don't be afraid to bail if the situation calls for it. You don't have to be a hero. You don't have to prove it. If you're uncomfortable, don't let yourself get into a serious situation. And some of that you can avoid by going somewhere really close by. Go with people that are more experienced, that are willing to help kind of teach you some tips and tricks, because there's a ton of them out there. Everything from eating before you go to bed, just so that your body's got some dense nutrients to really work through. It raises your body temperature. You're going to sleep a lot warmer. Putting a Nalgene full of hot water, even boiling water, seal that thing up, make sure it's sealed real well, and you can put that in your tent, in your sleeping bag, and it just radiates heat for a few hours. There's all these little tips and tricks, and it's hard to know a lot of that stuff until you go do it with people that I learned from people that had a lot more experience than I did, and I watch a lot of this stuff too. So I'm very interested in learning and watching, and some of these guys that are going out in the Canadian wilderness, and it's zero, and they're just having a blast and a good old time. You'll watch that and you go, okay, what are they doing? Is there anything that I can pick up from that? Because they're a lot more experienced with dealing with cold than even I am. And I think it's important to be humble and be open to learning, and not think that you know everything, because I think that arrogance can get you into trouble at times.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember my first winter backpacking overnight. I used what I had, and I had a 30-degree three-quarter quilt, and it was down in the teens, and I was cold. That's for sure. I was definitely cold. But the hardest part was my feet were just freezing, and it kept waking me up because the quilt didn't cover them. The underquilt didn't. They were in the top quilt, but the underquilt wasn't there. So, that was one where go back afterwards, learn from it, research. I did eventually order a full length quilt, but there's other stuff that you can do, whether it's putting a Z seat under your feet, down booties. There's so many tips and tricks out there from people who've experienced what you might go through that. Having that person with a little bit more experience there might save you a lot of problems right on the spot, even.
Yeah. Yeah. How would you say your gear has changed in your attempts to adapt to the colder environment, as you've gotten more experience with it? How much has that stuff changed?
From the first trip to now, everything. I think everything that I took on that first trip is now out of my kit. It was when I was newer into backpacking. I actually started backpacking in the wintertime, so that was my first experience, was cold weather backpacking, and it's all changed. I mean, it hasn't gone drastically different, but it's higher quality gear, better rated gear. Just leaving some silly stuff behind that I didn't need to bring, and and just making some better decisions. But no, I mean, it's changed a ton. I mean, I've gone to UGQ and E quilts, and I've got a tent set up, I've got a hammock set up, I've got a tarp set up, I've got so many different options to play different kinds of weather that it's been a lot of fun kind of seeing it evolve, and being able to pack for each specific trip differently, just to take advantage of whatever I can.
So do we need to plan a winter trip next year?
Next year or this year?
Well,
How's your knee doing?
it's getting better, but I think the first thing we have on the books is March.
That's
So,
true.
and it's down south, going down to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Hopefully by then, we're looking at temperatures in the 40s and 50s. You could still get temperatures that dip below freezing. So there is a chance that we could get some kind of snow or something like that. It's probably not super likely, but I'm talking about, do we do like upper Michigan in February or something crazy like that.
That could be pretty cool. Or even just do something so high in elevation that it's got a ton of snow in that challenge. High Sierras, something like that. Just depends scheduling wise, timing wise, what works out. But I mean, I'd be down for going out for a week in February and just playing in the snow.
Yeah, I think there's a lot when you talk about doing like heading out west and doing alpine. You think of like the ice axes and all the crampons and if you're doing like snowshoeing and things like that. There's a lot that I'd be a little out of my element. On something like that. I think it'd be nice to have maybe somebody that's been through that environment a little bit. Um, doing mountain passes and things like that when there could be issues with, it's a little dangerous because of snow or whatnot. I could see that being something that I don't have a whole lot of experience to fall back on. So I'd probably be hesitant to jump into that. But again, unless you had somebody with you that just knows the
Yeah.
ropes so well, I'm not sure how you gain that experience other than, doing it yourself and taking those risks, which I'm not sure that I'm a huge fan of.
I mean, that goes back to what we said about winter backpacking in general, though, right? If you're new at something, going with someone who has some more experience, or at least picking their brains and learning. But yeah, I mean, I'd be down for Michigan, Minnesota, something like that. Maybe Superior Trail, something cool up north. Dead of winter where there's snow and no leaves and no bugs, just us in the cold.
You could get a ton of snow up that way,
Yeah.
being off of Lake Superior. That could be really crazy. Yeah, that's exciting, but that would for me. So the thing that starts to kick in is the planning side. You start to go through what's typical. What could you get conditions wise? What do you have to plan for? What's your out? How do you exit out? Um, all of that sort of stuff. So
Michael Peterson said, Hoosiers can't even get our cars to trailheads out west. Clearly, he's never seen our trucks, right?
yeah. 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 Well, out west winter, that I think that would be pretty cool. I see us probably doing a few more out west trips. Maybe in the shoulder seasons, maybe
Yeah.
in the fall, where there's a little bit of a chance for that, but not too much. I mean, when we went to Colorado, I mean, what were your thoughts? They got how much snow did they get? It was like a week or two before we went out there.
It was over a foot of snow.
Yeah, they got a good bit, and there were a lot of people that were completely bailing on the route that we were doing because of the fear of just being snowed in and not being able to get over some of the passes. And I guess that would be something that you'd kind of have to plan for. Know the other routes out, have enough food, being able to survive if you couldn't get over one of the passes and you had to backtrack. All that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
I think it'd
with
be
the gear
completely different though if we were doing that in like February.
with the gear that I brought with me, I wouldn't have wanted to have been out there in a foot of snow. And be honest, I
Yeah.
wasn't set up for that. Had I known that it was going to be there, I could have made some adjustments and tried some new things, and probably still would have pursued the trip. But just if I flew out there and that happened, I don't know that I would have been able to do that trail based off of what I brought with me. That's not what I planned for.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, that's exactly what people were doing the week before. Is you had a huge number of them that didn't go at all, and I think there were still a few that went, but I think they were recommending for a lot of them not to, just be unless you were extremely experienced. I mean, it's you get into
Is
a foot of snow or more, and you get up onto the mountain tops where you could be getting quite a bit more than that. It could get dangerous pretty quick if you're not in the right, have the right gear, have the right equipment.
as challenging as that trip was, being up over 10,000 feet elevation up to 12,500, just in beautiful weather, you had a foot of snow to that, man. That would have been rough. I don't know. I don't know how I would have handled that or how I would have done that. That
Well,
was,
yeah, you think I would probably have to have even different, like you think of footwear. What I had was lightweight, breathable. If it got wet, your socks are getting wet. Hopefully it dries out pretty quickly, but I'd probably completely change my foot gear to something that could deal with snowy conditions if that was more likely.
yeah,
So a lot would change, and that's why I think I'd be more cautious or more nervous about doing something like that, where there's a high likelihood of that sort of thing.
yeah,
I've never done snowshoeing. I've
me
never
either.
done. Never had to use the crampons, never had to use the ice axe, just never been in conditions where it's been needed. So that would be that. I'd like to do it. I mean, at some point in time, I think I'd love to. All this stuff interests me to continue to push your skills and learn more, and try things that you've never done before. Because I mean, that's just kind of the way I'm wired. I'm interested in getting better at this. So until you really try it, it's gonna be a bucket list kind of thing. So just maybe baby steps. What's the next half step that we can try before doing something like that?
Yeah, see, that's where you balance me out on our trips because I just dive right in. I'm just like, let's go for it. Let's do it. We'll figure it out. That's probably not the best mindset to have in winter backpacking, but I wouldn't advise that.
No, I just tell you, I'm right behind you, and then
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Uh huh. And then I'm out in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere.
well, I think that was like the running gag for a few different things that happened over the summer. It was like, okay, that's a great idea. You first.
Right. I'll follow you. You can go first.
Yeah, yeah. If you come up with the idea, you get to do it first. So,
Right.
all right. Well,
Um, one more thing that I just thought of it. One more thing to watch in wintertime too. Summer we like to just kind of plow through creek beds sometimes and running water. That's something to think about too in the winter is your feet and getting wet.
yeah. I mean, it's like I said before, changing footwear into something that's I'd probably go with something that's waterproof that you can deal with that. Again, the last thing you want to be doing is any kind of like river crossings or deeper stream crossings, even because the worry is you don't want your clothing getting wet, you don't want your shoes to get wet, your socks wet, that sort of thing. So doing that kind of thing in the winter, I think provides a whole nother level of challenge and decision making that you have to um, be more cautious, be more mindful. As you were talking about that too, I was thinking about it's not just worrying about yourself too. When you're out there, you may be in a situation where all of a sudden now you've got to make decisions for a group, and it could be pretty quickly. If you're out, you and I, and all of a sudden, you're showing signs of hypothermia and you're not thinking straight, and all of these other signs start to pop up, it's on me to then make those calls and say, all right, we've got to make some decisions quickly to get us out of this danger and get us back to safety. So that's just part of being willing to do those trips. Is you got to be willing to understand that, hey, it could come down to I get into hypothermia, and you've got to make a decision to how do we get out of this situation in a hurry and get people warmed up, because you
Yeah.
don't mess around when all of a sudden now you're starting to get into dangerous territory. So
Yeah. For sure. I mean, I know this whole video is about winter backpacking too. The same can be said for summer and heat stroke and dehydration. It's just kind of code on the trail. I mean, you got to look out for the people around you and other hikers. It's just being a good human being.
yep. And there's not a lot of people out there to help take care of each other. So sometimes you don't necessarily want to be the one to do it, but there's nobody else that can. So you have to kind of step up and take care of that stuff. So, well, cool. I don't know that there's a whole lot more that I have to say about winter backpacking other than if you've never done it, it's definitely worth doing. I know a lot of people might be hesitant about that or think it is a little crazy, but maybe it is. But it's also a lot of fun, and I've grown to really enjoy it. And it's one of my favorite seasons to do some backpacking. My trips tend to be a little shorter, but that doesn't make them any less enjoyable. So
Yeah. I'm looking forward to getting out in the snow here sometime soon. Hopefully this month or next month I'll find some time to get out in the snow.
are we going to get any snow this year? It's been like the winter without snow so far.
Hopefully. I'll just have to watch that weather forecast. Hopefully
Yeah.
it happens on a Sunday. Sunday nights are gonna be my nights. My
That's
work
it.
schedule, man, it just changed. I'm off Sunday, Monday. It's pretty awesome. So I can get some overnights in.
So you want some snow so you can do some overnights on Sunday nights. All right.
I do.
Well,
Yep. Sunday night, snow, backpacking, sleep in the cold, be crazy, right?
yeah. Why not?
Yep.
I'm looking forward to it. So I'm just looking forward to getting back on trail a little bit. You know, doing some rehab and getting ready to get back out there. It's fun to talk about this stuff, and it's fun to, I watch a lot of stuff, and all the different message boards that, in this community. There's so many different resources out there, but it's also nice to just kind of connect with like-minded people. So, these conversations that are constantly going behind the scenes, it helps. I mean, it helps kind of fill the void of not being able to get out there and do this stuff. But I'm really looking forward to March, to getting back on trail, and I've been cleared to at least begin the workout kind of phase. So I have been hobbling the last 2 days because I am sore from them kicking my butt in rehab, just to, working muscles that I haven't been able to do in 6 weeks. Now it's like, okay, I think we can push it and see how everything responds. So I am sore, but my mind is about, I don't want to be sore going through the Smoky Mountains. So
Yeah.
if that's where I want to be, I have to push through all of this stuff here over the next, 2 months or so until we're out there. So,
Yeah, we'll be just over 2 months we'll be out there.
yep. Yep.
When's the doc gonna clear you so that you can start at least doing some hiking, backpacking again?
I do my final, let's see, when is that? First, second week of February. I do the final checkup, and at that point, everything should be fine. But to be honest, most of the PT guys are, I'm at the point where it's like, okay, your knee doesn't seem to be the thing that's holding you back. It's now getting you stronger back to at least where you were, so that then you can do the physical training side of things, because you got to get just stronger, just so that you don't have even, hey, I slip on the ice and fall, and because your muscle groups don't have the strength to compensate or withstand that, you get some other kind of injury. So I really am watching to make sure that incrementally I'm getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, so that I can do a little bit of treadmill work, even if it's just walking up incline, eventually putting on a backpack, doing the same thing, getting out on the trails here locally, doing a little bit more, building up some mileage. Right now it's a lot about strength training and core training and all of that, just to get back to semi-normal.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So hopefully soon.
Yeah. I think hopefully soon. If I'm doing the training stuff that I'm doing right now for the next 3 weeks, I'll be itching to go out and do something, even if it's just, smaller things, but getting out and hiking some of the local parks, and, maybe going over to the fort, maybe doing some stuff like that again, of just, hey, let's get a few 3 to 5 miles, something like that in, and work up a little bit of a sweat maybe. just to kind of, again, push it. The goal right now is soreness is good, pain is not. So, muscle soreness is fine. Joint pain, site pain, surgery pain, none of that stuff is good. So far, I've been pretty lucky, and we're pushing it pretty hard, but we're not getting like negative pushback. No swelling, no pain, that sort of thing. Just muscle soreness. So
Okay. Well, I can make a promise that the first Sunday night that we're going to get some snow in Indiana, I'll be out backpacking. I promise there'll be a video on YouTube. And whether your knee is good or not, you'll be there in spirit, right, buddy?
oh, I'll be there. I'll be there. Well, I like
In
my
person
comment there about what's that?
In person or spiritually, right?
Well, my goal is to be in person. The moral support, the there in spirit. Yeah, I think I've had enough of that. I'm ready to get. And no, surgery doesn't mean you won't get sore. It just my goal is that I get all of my soreness out before I go to the Smokies. So that's the hope. Is I push myself so hard. It's kind of like that old, you know, athlete mentality of I want practices to be so hard that games seem easy. So that's
Yeah.
at least my mentality. And I don't think I hit that in Colorado because that was still kicked my butt even with the training that I did, but it kind of opened my eyes that, all right, I've got to do more next time before I go out there. And the same thing I think is going to be true in the Smokies. We won't have quite the altitude, but we're going to have all of the vertical is almost the same for the loop that we're looking at doing for what it was out in Colorado. So we're going to have our work cut out for us to get through that without a whole lot of stress or dragging a leg up a mountain or whatnot. So
Yeah.
yeah. All right, dude. Are we good? We gonna call this?
Yeah. I don't think I have much else on winter backpacking other than
No.
keep your fingers crossed for some weekend snow.
Yep. Yeah, I'm one of those that I know people around here think that's nuts where I wish for snow, but I do. I just like it. I don't know. I think by the time we get to the end of the season, I'm done with it, but I feel like we haven't had that season yet. It's been a little bit chilly, but we just haven't had any of the snow. So wouldn't mind getting a little bit of that. So
Yeah.
So why don't we go ahead and wrap it up here? Thanks everybody for tuning in and throwing some questions in there and being along for the ride. We appreciate it. It's always fun to get out here and chat this topic. So we will definitely do it again, and maybe submit too. We'll post. If you haven't gone, this is probably a good time to mention that. You can go follow me. Go join kind of the discussions. There is a group on Andy Parrish Outdoors on Facebook. So you can follow the page, and we do some posts on that page from time to time of different videos as I'm putting them out. But there's also the discussion group that you can join, and so we'll ask from time to time things like, what questions or topics do you guys want us to talk about, things like that. So feel free to go check us out there, be a part of that, join the conversation. You can do the same thing with Brent. Follow him on YouTube. If you guys haven't checked out his channel, go check out Smolder Outdoors. I know he's been planning. We've been talking behind the scenes of some things that he's looking to crank out here in the next few weeks. More content, some interesting topics, things that might be worth checking out. So go check him out. And then all the other normal places, you can follow me on Instagram too. I'm going to post some things there from time to time, pictures and throwbacks and things like that of some of the trips that we're going to do, and we've already done. But it's a great place again just to be a part of the conversation, and I'm out there on Twitter as well. So with that, I'm going to say thanks so much. And for Brent, I'm Andy. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, be well.